Greetings YouTube, Simon here with you once again today as we continue to look at more Final Fantasy VII Story in preparation for the upcoming remake. Now the question for today was Aerith an alien? Might appear to be a peculiar one, but trust me, this is a question that has been asked many times over the last 20 years. However, it is also a question that I believe has a definite canon answer to it. Now what we do know about Aerith is that she was a descendant of the ancient race known as the Cetra, and as far as we know she was also the last remaining member of this race, with her death then leading to its extinction. Now the planet itself was a living entity in Final Fantasy VII, and the Cetra were able to commune with it due to their spiritual prowess. Now Aerith of course had this ability, also seen as how she was a descendant, but several people who have played Final Fantasy VII have assumed that the Cetra themselves are indeed an extraterrestrial race that arrived on the planet long ago, but whose origins remain somewhere else. Now, I understand that the question itself might sound a little far-fetched to start with, but don't forget that the whole concept of aliens is nothing new to Final Fantasy VII. Jenova itself was an extraterrestrial being that crashed to the planet long ago. Now that of course doesn't mean the Cetra were an alien race, but it does mean that if they were, then it shouldn't be seen as something all that unusual. Now the reason why people think that this might be the case is because of this particular line from Sephiroth during Disc 1. He says, and I quote, "This planet originally belonged to the Cetra. Cetra was an itinerant race. They would migrate in, settle the planet, then move on." Now we do know with certainty that it was part of the nature of the Cetra, it was kind of inbuilt into their DNA to not remain in one location for too long. They would indeed migrate, settle and then move on. This was all part of their journey towards finding the promised land. But I'm sure you'll agree it's possible to interpret these words by Sephiroth here as not only the Cetra's intent to migrate across the planet, but across the cosmos. Just those words, they would migrate in, settle the planet and then move on. Very much make it sound like they're moving on from the planet. And Sephiroth's phrase that they would migrate in makes it sound like they were coming from elsewhere. So that's the basis as to why this subject is often tackled. However, I firmly believe that we can be as certain as pretty much we can be certain about anything in Final Fantasy VII that the Cetra are not an alien race, and there are various reasons for thinking that they are in fact just a terrestrial race that have their origins very much on the planet of the game. First of all, when Sephiroth is speaking these words, he is repeating everything he has learned from the work of Professor Gast, and at the time when Gast was writing, the Shinra themselves had a very limited understanding of the ancients and the Cetra. As a matter of fact, they at that time believed that Jenova was an ancient or Cetra, when indeed now of course we know that it wasn't. But Sephiroth was clearly susceptible to this misunderstanding since he was repeating it here in this conversation, and so everything he says here is based on that misunderstanding. So even if Gast's research suggests that the Cetra were an alien race, then it doesn't necessarily mean that they were. However, I don't even think that his research suggested that either. To be honest, I think the most likely situation we have going on in this instance is that this is just based on perhaps a mistranslation of the original Japanese dialogue. Now, we know of course that Final Fantasy VII suffered perhaps the worst localization that's ever been seen for any AAA game coming out of Japan here in the West. It was rushed, it was hurried, it didn't really have the proper support behind it, and it just ended up shockingly bad, and I think this is just another example of that. Now, I don't pretend to speak Japanese myself, but those that do have consistently stated over the years that the phrase that's translated as planet here in this English dialogue could very much be translated as land, and contextually that would actually make the most sense. And all of a sudden, if that is the case, then this entire dialogue begins to make much more sense in the context of the Cetra just being a terrestrial race, but a terrestrial race that migrates over the planet. And this is also backed up by some of the other characters. For example, Aerith suggests later on in the game that the Cetra were born from the planet and speak with the planet. So not only were they not alien, but they actually came directly from the planet, i.e. from the life stream itself. And this makes sense then when Aerith also speaks of the fact that they will be returning to the promised land. This is an illusion, if you like, of the fact that once they die, they will be going back to the life stream, the ultimate fulfillment of the promised land itself. So as far as I'm concerned, and I believe this is the proper canon answer to the question, no, the Cetra, including Aerith, were not an alien species. They were from the planet, and this dialogue by Sephiroth was based upon a mistranslation into English due to the poor localization of the game. And as I suggest, I believe we can actually be really confident in this, but if you disagree with me, then please do share your thoughts in the comment section, or if you just have anything else you want to add. But hey, thanks for stopping by, checking out the video. Hope it's been helpful to you, and have a fantastic day. I'll see you next time. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, checking out the video today. Now, perhaps you might consider becoming a YouTube channel member. Doing so not only supports me as a creator, but it also bestows upon you certain cool bonuses, such as the ability to have your name stand out in YouTube comments and live stream chats, as well as having yourself credited in every future upload that I do. If that sounds interesting, check out the join button, which you can find just below if watching on PC.